It began as an ordinary Tuesday morning at St. Mary's Hospital. Emma Winters, a 30-year-old nurse with 6 years of experience, was known for her meticulous adherence to protocol, but also for her unwavering belief that patients always came before paperwork. Emma noticed the slight tremble in his hands as orderlies wheeled in the new transfer patient. Walter Hammond, 78, wore a faded veteran's cap that had seen better days. A small oxygen tube ran beneath his nose, and his weathered face carried deep lines of a life fully lived. The medical chart indicated he'd been transferred for specialized cardiac care after a series of concerning episodes. As Emma passed by, clipboard in hand reviewing another patient's medication schedule, she heard the distinctive alarm of a heart monitor flatlining. She turned to see Walter's body go rigid. The orderlies froze, uncertain. In that moment, no doctors were present in the hallway. Without hesitation, Emma dropped her clipboard. The sound of plastic hitting linoleum echoed through the suddenly silent corridor. She rushed to Walter's side, lowering the stretcher guardrail. "Code blue," she shouted, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Get a crash cart." Her hands found their position on Walter's chest, interlaced fingers, arms straight, shoulders aligned. She began compressions with mechanical precision. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted silently, maintaining the rhythm that might keep the stranger alive. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she reached 90 seconds. Her arms burned, still no response. "Come on," she whispered. "Fight." After nearly 2 minutes, which felt like an eternity, Walter's chest suddenly heaved on its own. A weak but definite pulse returned. Emma stepped back, her scrubs damp with perspiration, her arms trembling from exertion. That's when Supervisor Victoria Blake appeared, face contorted with bureaucratic fury. She didn't ask about the patient's condition, didn't acknowledge the life just saved. "Who authorized you to intervene?" she demanded, voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. "This patient isn't assigned to your ward. You violated protocol." Emma stood speechless, still catching her breath as Victoria confiscated her ID badge. "You're suspended pending review. Clear out your locker." Emma looked once more at Walter, now breathing steadily as the emergency response team finally arrived. She nodded slightly, then walked away, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly silent hallway. Emma sat alone in the staff break room, staring at her reflection in the coffee she hadn't touched. The suspension notice lay beside her, effective immediately. The hospital administration had called an emergency review meeting in an hour. The charge, unauthorized medical intervention outside her assigned responsibilities. Through the glass walls, she could see her colleagues casting sympathetic glances, but most averted their eyes. Hospital politics. Nobody wanted to be next. Her phone buzzed, a text from Nurse Parker. "You did the right thing, but they're scared of liability. Don't expect support from management." Emma slipped her phone back into her pocket. 6 years of spotless performance reviews, countless lives touched, and now her career hung in the balance because she had refused to watch a man die. The meeting room felt unnecessarily cold when Emma entered. 5 faces looked up: Director of Nursing, Hospital Administrator, Legal Counsel, HR Representative, and of course, Supervisor Blakino allies. "Miss Winters," the administrator began, shuffling papers importantly, "you understand why we're here. Your actions this morning represent a serious breach of hospital protocol." "I performed CPR on a patient in cardiac arrest," Emma replied, her voice quiet but unwavering. "There were no doctors present. The transport staff were not trained in advanced life support." "That wasn't your determination to make," Blake interjected. "He wasn't your assigned patient. There's a chain of command." "If I had waited for proper authorization," Emma interrupted, meeting the supervisor's gaze directly, "Mr. Hammond would be dead right now. Is that the outcome you would have preferred?" The room fell silent. From the corner of her eye, Emma noticed a man in a dark suit rise from his seat in the waiting area outside. He had been listening intently. He walked away quickly, phone already at his ear. "This isn't about preferences," the legal counsel spoke carefully. "It's about liability and established protocols when staff act beyond their assigned scope." "My scope is saving lives," Emma said. "That's what I was trained to do. That's what I swore to do." The administrator sighed. "We'll reconvene after reviewing the security footage. Until then, your suspension stands." What no one in that room realized was that the man who had been listening, the one who had slipped away to make a phone call, was retired Colonel Thomas Hammond, Walter's younger brother, and he had heard everything. In a quiet corner of the hospital lobby, Thomas spoke urgently into his phone. "General, it's Hammond. I need a favor." His voice dropped lower. "Someone deserves protection and recognition. How quickly can you get here?" Back in the locker room, Emma slowly packed her personal items, a framed photo of her graduation, a coffee mug gifted by a patient's family, tokens of a career she had poured her heart into. She wondered how many lives would be lost to protocol and bureaucracy. How many split-second decisions would be scrutinized by people who had never had to make them. She didn't regret what she'd done. She would do it again even if it cost her everything. At precisely 11 a.m., the distinctive sound of polished dress shoes on linoleum turned heads throughout the hospital's administrative wing. A tall figure in full military dress uniform moved with purpose through the corridors. Colonel Alexander Blackwood, decorated combat veteran and current military liaison officer, carried a wooden box tucked under one arm and an official envelope bearing government seals in his hand. The medals on his chest caught the fluorescent light, each one representing moments of valor that few civilians could comprehend. "I need to speak with your hospital director," he informed the startled receptionist, his voice calm but brooking no argument. Immediately, the receptionist fumbled with the phone, eyes wide at the imposing figure before her. "Sir, may I ask what this is regarding?" "It concerns a matter of honor," the colonel replied, standing perfectly straight, his cap tucked precisely under his arm, and a nurse named Emma Winters. Within minutes, Emma found herself summoned back to the same meeting room. This time, however, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. The hospital director herself had joined them, her usually confident demeanor noticeably subdued. And at the head of the table sat Colonel Blackwood, his expression unreadable beneath decades of military discipline, his weathered face revealing nothing but the gravitas of his purpose. "I understand," the colonel began, his voice carrying the weight of authority that needed no volume to command attention, "that Nurse Winters has been suspended for providing life-saving care to Walter Hammond." The director shifted uncomfortably in her leather chair, manicured fingers adjusting papers that didn't need arranging. "Colonel, with all due respect, this is an internal hospital matter. Walter Hammond," the colonel continued as if she hadn't spoken, each word measured and deliberate, "is not just any patient." He opened the wooden box with reverent care, revealing a Purple Heart medal nestled against deep blue velvet. The medal gleamed under the conference room lights, its purple and gold a stark contrast to the sterile whites and blues of the hospital environment. Staff Sergeant Walter Hammond served 3 tours in Vietnam. During his second tour, he cared for wounded men through enemy fire after their helicopter was shot down. With shrapnel in his leg and burns across his back, he returned to the wreckage 3 times, refusing evacuation until every man was accounted for. 2 of those men are now surgeons. One is a congressman. The room fell silent. Even Supervisor Blake appeared to shrink in her chair, her previous righteousness evaporating like morning mist. Colonel Blackwood slid a USB drive across the table. "I've taken the liberty of reviewing your security footage. It clearly shows that Nurse Winters was the only medical professional who responded appropriately to a life-threatening situation. She followed every protocol for emergency intervention exactly as she should have." The director inserted the drive into her laptop. The room watched in silence as the morning's events unfolded on screen. Emma's immediate response, the perfect form of her CPR technique, the precious minutes that passed before anyone else arrived to help. "In the military," Colonel Blackwood continued, "we have a saying, initiative in the absence of orders. It means taking the right action when there's no time to wait for permission. It's what we train our best for." He turned to Emma. "Your actions embody the highest standards of medical care and human decency. You didn't need to know Sergeant Hammond's military record to know his life was worth saving." The hospital director cleared her throat. "In light of this additional context, I believe we should reconsider our position. Miss Winters' suspension is lifted immediately." "That's not enough," Colonel Blackwood said firmly. "This woman deserves recognition, not apology. She exemplifies everything your hospital should stand for." The director nodded slowly. You're right. And we will address our emergency response protocols to ensure the situation doesn't repeat itself. Supervisor Blake stared at her folded hands, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Sometimes, Colonel Blackwood said, rising to his feet, the bravest thing isn't running into combat. Sometimes it's standing up to the people who should be on your side. He extended his hand to Emma. On behalf of the armed forces and the Hammond family, I thank you. As Emma shook his hand, she noticed something she hadn't before. The colonel wore a medical service pin on his uniform. He had once been one of them. You don't owe me an apology, Colonel Blackwood told the hospital staff as he prepared to leave. You owe her your gratitude. Some people don't need just the instinct to save lives. 3 days later, Emma stood beside Walter Hammond's bed in the ICU. His eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on her face. Recognition dawned in his weathered features. You're the one, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. My brother told me what happened. Emma adjusted his line. Just doing my job, Mr. Hammond. Walter's hand, spotted with age but still strong, reached for hers. I pulled men from burning helicopters, he said. Carried buddies through jungles when they couldn't walk. Never once thought, his eyes glistened, never thought someone would save me someday. Emma squeezed his hand gently. That's how it works. We look out for each other. Later that afternoon, Emma found Supervisor Blake waiting by the nurse's station. The older woman's usual rigid posture had softened, her eyes downcast. Nurse Winters, she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I owe you an apology, a public one. She gestured toward the staff gathering for shift change. May I? Emma nodded, uncertain what to expect. Blake cleared her throat, drawing the attention of the dozen nurses preparing for the evening shift. I want to acknowledge something important, she announced. 3 days ago, Nurse Winters made a decision that saved a life. I responded by punishing her for it. Her voice wavered slightly. I was wrong, and I am sorry. To Emma's astonishment, the head nurse continued, from today forward, we're implementing a new emergency response protocol. The Winters protocol authorizing any qualified nurse to initiate emergency procedures when a doctor isn't immediately available. One by one, the nurses rose to their feet. The applause started slowly, then built until it filled the room. Emma felt her cheeks flush with unexpected emotion. Dr. Mitchell, the hospital's chief of medicine, appeared in the doorway. Nurse Winters, he called out above the applause, the director would like to see you. In the director's office, Emma was surprised to find both Colonel Blackwood and Thomas Hammond waiting alongside hospital leadership. We've been reviewing our emergency response protocols, the director explained, and we've realized they're inadequate, focused on hierarchies, not enough on patient outcomes. She handed Emma a folder. We'd like you to head a committee to revise them. With your experience and moral clarity, you're the right person to lead this change. As Emma left the office, her reinstated ID badge clipped securely to her scrubs, she paused to look through the ICU window. Walter sat propped up in bed, his brother Thomas beside him, both men laughing at some shared memory. She thought about the fine line between rules and purpose, about how systems designed to protect can sometimes do the opposite, and about the courage it takes to distinguish between them. When Emma entered the ICU for her evening rounds, the usual bustle of activity briefly paused. But this time, the eyes that turned toward her held something new, not scrutiny or judgment, but respect. She nodded briefly, then turned to her patients. After all, they were why she was here. Some things hadn't changed. There are people trained to save lives, but not everyone has the courage to act when no one gives permission. Emma didn't wait. Because of that, a life was preserved, a policy was rewritten, and a community learned what truly matters. In a world often paralyzed by protocols and permissions, it's easy to forget why those systems were created in the first place. They exist to save lives, not to prevent heroes from emerging. The hospital's new Winters protocol wasn't just about changing rules. It was about remembering the human heartbeat behind every regulation. Walter Hammond spent decades believing he was the one who saved others. It took Emma Winters to show him that courage flows in all directions, that sometimes the battlefield is a hospital corridor, and sometimes the enemy isn't foreign, it's our own fear of stepping outside the lines. Perhaps the most profound victory wasn't the one Emma won against hospital bureaucracy. It was the victory she won for every patient who would come after those whose lives would now be saved because someone dared to rewrite the rules of permission. When lives hung in the balance, sometimes the most heroic acts aren't performed on battlefields, but in hospital corridors. Sometimes the bravest decisions aren't the ones that follow the rules, but the ones that remember why the rules exist in the first place. Have you ever witnessed someone criticized for doing what was right? Have you seen courage punished and protocol prioritized over people? At Tales of the Heart, we bring you stories like Emma, stories of ordinary people making extraordinary choices when it matters most. Subscribe to Tales of the Heart today and join our community that celebrates the human spirit in its finest moments. Each week, we share powerful narratives of those who stand firm in their convictions, who choose compassion over convenience, and who remind us all what truly matters in life. Click the subscribe button below to never miss our inspiring stories of healthcare heroes, everyday champions, and quiet warriors who make this world a better place. Share your own experiences in the comments. Who believe every act of courage deserves to be honored. Tales of the Heart, where real stories touch real lives. Subscribe now.